Welcome to Our Table, Our Talk, a program of the Community and Family Resources Department of the City of Bloomington. In honor of Black History Month, we'll be discussing issues for and about African Americans living in Bloomington. These conversations are in no way limited to African Americans, but are designed to spark a conversation. Today we'll be talking about finding community. You all know when I first came, or some of you know, when I first came to Bloomington, I came because my husband was appointed here as a United Methodist minister, and so we moved here from Jeffersonville. And in trying to find a church, we realized there were no African American United Methodist conversations, and that's sort of where we had found our community in other cities was in the church. And so we ended up joining a United Methodist church that was predominantly white, but which meant we had to find our community somewhere else. And so we did things like join commissions and committees, and I met some women and we started a book club. But I just wonder, you know, and I'll start over here with Rafi and Alandra, how did you all, I mean, coming here as students, as a student, and you were working, I'm assuming, how did you all start to find community once you moved here? Well,
I think one of the things that was nice about being a graduate student was you become a part of a cohort. So you meet people within that cohort that are from different places. You know, you socialize. You're trying to find places like, you know, where to eat, where, you know, are people, you know, congregating. You know, you're trying to get to just simply know, you know, where people are. And I think coming into Bloomington, one of the things that, you know, certainly coming from Atlanta, I was just like, where are black folks? Like, I'm gonna be very honest, I was driving down Walnut, and I hadn't seen, you know, brother or sister in a while. And I saw one at the gas station, and I quite literally, I pulled over and I got out and I hugged that brother. And I said, where are the people at? He was like, I don't know. Like,
well, it's really interesting when you say that. I remember when we came for our interview, because as a clergy family, we were interviewed before we got here, and the person that was taking us around, showing us where we were going to live and that whole thing, said, now you all are going to have to be each other's best friend because there are no black people in Bloomington. I mean, just literally dismissed the fact that there were any black people, but and to me it was a university town, so I knew there had to be somebody,
right.
You know. Now they may not have been United Methodist, but there had to be somebody. Alandra, you said it was harder for you.
It was a lot harder for me because he was immersed in the university culture, classes. You know, they do socials and things like that at the beginning of the year. So I was home, and I did not have a job when I first came here. So I was actually substitute teaching, trying to become employed with the school district here. And his suggestion is like, you should probably seek out the graduate chapter for your sorority here. And so at that particular time when we first got here, they were having an event at the beginning of the year. And so I actually attended the event. I didn't, you know, reach out to them and tell them I was coming. I just attended and kind of observed. And when the event was over, then I told them I was actually a member of you know, the organization. And from there, I started attending these. So I actually reached out to my organization as a way to begin to find community here.
So as longtime Bloomington residents, you know, who went to elementary and high school here, does that mean that there was always a sense of community for you? I mean, was it through a faith community, your different families? How did?
I will say that it definitely, our family was here. We all kind of migrated from California here together. So we already had a sense of community, and we had family here before. So our whole family basically on my mother's side was here. So that was the community. And as we continued to go to school, we kind of added in more people into our community, into our family. But it was difficult after high school, going into college, to build my own personal community. I will say that that's where it got a little difficult. Mostly I have social anxiety disorder. So it was me having to reach out and talk to people and get to know people outside of my comfort zone. So that was difficult, but at the same time there were organizations that I could reach out to, and I definitely used my faith community to do that, to reach out to people and get involved and have a sense of community and grow more people, pull more people into my community. But it was, growing up here, when you see Black people, you connect with Black people. Yeah. So you're kind of like, hey, you're Black, come around here. Yeah. Hey, you're Black, come sit with me. So it was kind of like that growing up here in school. It was like, we eat together, we sit together. We actually had a Black culture club in high school. So we were connected to each other that way as well, but I was related to everybody, so that always helps. Yeah. But outside of that, that's where I ran into kind of hit a wall and had to figure out how to make community on my own.
I know for me, it was through the church, but you have to understand where I came from. It was an old steel town, and it was the hood, and that's all I can really say about it. And the culture shock was, we went from living in that environment to Bloomington, and it was night and day different. Really, the nice thing was we did find community through the church, started connecting with people through the church, and that's really what got us that sense of community once again, because we went from a place that was, 80% African American to a place that's like 4% African American, and there's going to be a drastic difference.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Chicago, so. And I grew up in Chicago on the west side of Chicago. So anybody that knows what that is, and so it was always community. We lived in that community where if you were out of pocket, there was somebody that was not a parent or a relative that was putting you in check. Right. And so that's the kind of community that I grew up in. And so when I left, and even as an adult with my son, he was growing up, and his babysitter was the woman that babysat me when I was younger. And so we just always had those grandmothers and those mothers and those people raising us. And so what is it like to raise children? Like raising children in a community where you don't have that. I mean, I say so often, I'm so glad that my son is an adult and that I'm not raising a child in Bloomington, not because Bloomington isn't a good, safe place to raise a child, but there is that family. Well, you all have family here, but when you don't have family here, like you all, it just becomes so much harder.
So I'm from Chicago.
Southside. All right.
So I absolutely know what you're talking about. I grew up in an enclave of Black people. The teenagers across the street, there were 4 girls in the house. They babysat the entire neighborhood. They all had their children within the neighborhood that they babysat. And so for us, when we had our daughter here, he automatically recognized that we didn't have community because we're not from here. So he actually, in terms of community, was fortunate as a graduate student at the time. There was a Black moms group here comprised of professors, their wives, and graduate students who were, parents, and a couple undergrads too, Black parents. And they became each other's community. They had play groups here, they met, so they became our community. It was a way that we found, care for our child. Those were the people that we socialized with. Those were the women that on Friday nights we would, take the children and all congregate together and have a glass of wine or pizza and let the kids play. So I think I was really fortunate in that, through him, with him being a graduate student, that he met other students who were from, I call them non-traditional students. And so I was able to connect in that way. And to this day, when we meet new people, we try to give that, pass that forward and do that same thing.
Yeah. So how do you give your kids a sense of, that was why you give your sense of kids community, but also a sense of their culture, and keep them grounded in their culture in a city that, is limited in that way?
I can say, at least for me, I'm just fortunate that my kids aren't dealing with the same things that I was dealing with when I was a kid, because I went to elementary school here, and
Raisin in the rice bowl.
Raisin in the rice bowl. I mean, it literally, until I hit middle school, is when I stopped experiencing where I was the only person of color in my class, period. And the classes that I weren't in, there weren't any. And that's just how it was.
Yeah.
Now I see my oldest, she's in elementary school, and she's in elementary school with all shades of people, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, just to add on to I think some of the things that he's saying, we're very intentional about, aside from school, about actually making connections and forging relationships with other families. Part of, I think, some of the things that, we're talking about, when you talk about culture, I really see that like kind of as something that's, constantly growing and, challenging. And there's things that I want to make sure that I'm giving, to my daughter based on, who we are, who our families, what our families value. But when it comes to her identity, honestly, circumstances of just faith. I mean, you meet people through meeting people, and we've been so blessed in this space to meet people who not only had little girls around the same age, and children around the same age, but are kind of really searching for that same thing. So we have to recreate our family and be very intentional about doing that. And what I mean by that is, I try not to even be sometimes overzealous when I meet another family to say, I want to grab them and just say, okay, let's just run down everything. Look, this is where we are. Look, I'm normal. I don't have this happening. My wife does that. That type of thing. But then, some people are like kind of taking it back, like, slow down, slow down a little bit. Yeah. But we want to make sure we making that connection, because I want to say, like, we are, at this place again geographically. Our closest family members are, in Chicago. It's 5-6 hours away, and we have to be very intentional about who we're bringing, into our family, and at the same time, skin folk all the time ain't kinfolk. So under those circumstances, we've been blessed to just be around good people, white, Latino, but definitely, but I'm making sure that when it comes to her being a girl and what that experience is, that, I'm anybody that's promoting that, that's what I'm doing.
And the educator in me thinks a little different. So in terms of like her education, I'm really attuned to media and the images that she sees and the people that she's around in spaces. So for me, in our household, I push her having dolls that look like her for representation. Most of the bookshelf, I'm an elementary teacher, so I have thousands of books. But in terms of what we pull off the shelf, we really make sure that we read those things where she's represented and where she sees people that look like her.
Yes.
And I call it deprogramming, and I don't apologize for it. I've told a lot of her friends, her white friends, that I do it, because she's come home and said things as a toddler, that I had to then think of, how do I make sure that her esteem as a young black girl is solid, that she is comfortable in the skin that she's in, that she's comfortable with her hair texture and, her eyes and all of those things. So from two different perspectives, the teacher in me, the educator, kicks in about, what I experienced as, a black girl, what I got from my family, my mom, things like that. It's very different for her because I grew up in that, that black enclave where
And you don't even think about it.
And you don't think about that.
Yeah.
Well, in this space, I do. You know,
Yeah, right, exactly.
My dad's friends were judges and police officers. They were black.
Yeah.
But in this space, she sees that very differently. And most of her friends that she comes in contact with on a daily basis are not black. So I have to really listen to the conversation that she has with me. I watch the things that she, reads and picks up. And we have conversations around that, around the things that she does and why. Why are we doing these things? So she has an understanding of who she is, in this space, in this country, in this world.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, yeah, Rafi, you said, talked about creating your family, and I know that's something that I had to do too, coming here in '98. I was like you. I mean, I needed to know where to get my hair done because, the hair. And so I went to a department store in the mall, stood at the bottom of the escalator, and waited because I knew somebody black was shopping. Right. And so I waited until somebody came down and I was like, where do you get your hair done? That's how I found a beautician. And at that time, there were two. There are a couple of others now, but there were, I think, 2 beauticians and 1 barber. And so it was just sort of like, and my husband was going back to Indy to get his, haircut and stuff. I mean, so that was interesting. Now, you all have all girls, right? You have all girls? Yep. Yeah, so I think that's even a more interesting subject, like raising girls. I mean, here, and you said it's rough?
You need to love yourself just for who you are. So we are constantly telling them that their beautiful brown skin is your chocolate colored goddess, you're beautiful. This is, that is literally a daily part of the way we talk to our children. Telling them how beautiful their hair is, telling them how beautiful their texture is, letting them express their self through their hair. You want to wear your hair in an afro, just make sure you put your bonnet on at night. You want to wear your hair in braids, that's fine. We want them to be able to love what they have and just enjoy what they have. And it's been a blessing that the youngest one loves her hair out. She loves her curls. She literally gets mad when I put it in a ponytail. She doesn't, I've straightened her hair one time and she didn't like it. I washed it 5 minutes later so she could have her curls back. We are trying to ingrain that in them, that they are beautiful the way that they are.
Saying early on that, what you have is good.
Yeah.
Right.
It is good hair. It is beautiful skin. You are enough. I mean, I think those things are important. Have any of your kids come home and had any issues with kids at school that have, had any kind of negative attitudes toward them because of race?
Very much so. That has happened. It is, and I, as a parent, I kind of was like,
I was like, who's the kid? Where are his parents? Because we are throwing hands right now.
and it was interesting because I was like, I really thought that our community had kind of gotten past it. I was naive enough to believe that. I was naive.
She was on the bus, and it was around Halloween last year, and the little boy said, I have an outfit that I'm going to wear for you. I have a KKK uniform. And she didn't say anything to her teachers. She didn't say anything to anybody till she got home. And I opened the door for her and I was like, good afternoon, how you doing? And she fell apart right in front of me. And I'm like, she's emotional. So I'm like, did you get a bad grade? What's going on? She literally didn't talk to me for 5 minutes. She just cried. And I finally got her to calm down and she told me what happened. And I called him immediately. And he's actually friends with the former principal there. So he called her immediately. So we were going through the right channels. But again, my response was, where are his parents? Because he's in elementary school. He's getting this from somewhere. This is not just coming out of his mind that something that he saw on TV. This is something that he is learning from home. We need to talk to his parents. And I will say that I was very disappointed in the fact that there was never a meeting between us 2 parents.
Wow.
And we requested it multiple times.
I went in person to the school, requested it several times, followed up and requested it several times.
Just swept under
the rug. And the next thing you know, that principal left. And it's like, I know nothing's going to happen now because they're going to be, act dumb to the incident. So
so they don't know what happened. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Siri came home once and I guess one of the little boys in her preschool told her skin was dirty. It was brown. She didn't really understand it. So I had a conversation with her around it because she kept telling him she wasn't, her mother gave her a bath every night. So I don't think she equated that he was telling her that as it relates to race.
Right.
So I had a conversation with her regarding, you know, what he was trying to say, and then explaining to him that there are some people who will not like you because of the color of your skin, because that's just a reality for us.
Yeah.
So I didn't ask for, you know, for any talks, because she's also come home and said, I want a blonde hair and blue eyes. We had that conversation too. And as somebody who works with elementary children in schools, I've heard various things come out of children's mouths since we've been in Bloomington, that I know the children are simply mimicking the things that their parents have said around them, or that they've heard other adults in their space, in their communities, say around them. So for me, it's more important to educate her about what she'll experience, because I'm not going to always be there to explain those things to her. I'm not going to always be there to to go to bat for her. So if she has an understanding of what is happening, and if I can arm her with the tools to allow that to, to either handle it herself or for it to roll off her back like water on the duck, then that's what I'm going to try to do for her in that space.
For people coming to Bloomington, people of color who come to Bloomington, is it easier now, do you think, for them to find community? And how would you recommend folks gather? Our worship communities, what do you think are the best ways?
Some part of you has to have like a pioneering spirit. You got to step out on some things, because again, if you come in this place with these kind of notions about, okay, stuff's just going to come to you.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. You're going to be sitting in the house, looking at your significant other, or whoever that might be, and y'all might be getting on each other's nerves until you find some people, because, I can tell you, we definitely needed to have to do that. So we're glad to really have like personalities that gravitate toward. And I like to think,
And I think I'm always thinking, because we are an interfaith couple, I'm always thinking about how there are other people who are not interested in going to church to find community. So I think, with him being Muslim and me identifying as Christian or, spiritual, I know there are people who that's not where they are. And that's historically been the case for Black people. That's been a social place, a place where you can go worship, where you do meet community, but everybody's not in that space. So, in that same vein, I think his mom actually reached out to the Muslim community here. So we actually know another couple who very much so mirrors our same,
Well, from Indianapolis.
Right. Well, they live here, but they mirror us in terms of he's Muslim, she identifies as Christian, they're raising children in the community. So his mother immediately told him, make sure you find, imam's son in the space. He's there too. And I think for him, that was his immediate connection in terms of religion, and then me meeting his wife and seeing we're doing the same, we're sort of mirroring in our marriage, and now with raising our children, it looks much so the same. But there are a lot of people, for them, that they are not going to the church, and so they are not a part of a historically Black fraternity or sorority. They are not part of the university. They are working in the community, and that's a difficult thing. You feel very isolated when you meet those people who are those types of people. They don't have those sort of built-in, foundations or built-in communities that they can say, I can reach out. I know I'll find that. Where can I find that? I'll look in the paper and just find the local, historically Black church or predominantly Black church. So I always keep that in mind also when I see people, out in spaces that I've never seen, to make sure that I introduce myself, because I don't want to make those assumptions about people.
And I want to say, for us to make sure that we do that, to make sure that we reach out to people. I can remember being in the post office, and there's an African-American woman working in the post office, one of the first people I met, because she reached out and said, and do you know so and so and so and so. And so that's important. And so I always feel, because that happened for me, an obligation to do that to other people and to bring them in. I know my son was in a cab recently and was passing out things about the Black History Month Gala, like, do you know about the Black History Month Gala? So I think that's important. Our time is winding down, but I really, really want to thank you all for this conversation. It's a great conversation that we've had, and hopefully that we can keep this conversation going in community. If you like what you've heard us talk about today, be sure to like, comment, and share us on Facebook. And thank you all for joining our table and our talk today.